Today's episode of I Love Black People on Howard University's Radio Voices on Sirius XM 141 is brought to you by The Global Green Book, a Black survival guide. The Global Green Book 2020, the Healthcare Edition, which identifies Black-friendly and Black-owned healthcare providers worldwide. A Black survival guide highlighting places across the globe for Black people. The Global Green Book, available on Amazon and iloveblackpeople.com.
All right, welcome everyone to another episode of I Love Black People. We really are always trying to make sure we stay on top, and I'm your host, Sinclair Skinner, and today we've been blessed with somebody who's really been in the headlines and behind the scenes of the headlines in a very strong way, and been doing this for literally decades, and it's kind of hard to even imagine it's literally decades. Our amazing brother who's in communications, brother Mike McQuerry. Mike McQuerry, welcome to I Love Black People.
Sinclair Skinner, thank you for having me, man. I've been trying to get on this show for I don't know how long, since day one, but hey, you got me. I'm here. What's going on, brother?
All right. Well, look, I think real quickly, if you could just tell the folks, what do you do? And if you can connect the dots with what's been going on with this impeachment hearing and trial, I think that would be very helpful. Your background and how it intersects with the headlines that people see, even if they don't see you.
Yes, no problem, my brother. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, and I went to Jackson State University, and I got elected student body president down at Jackson State. Something you know a little bit something about that, and that's Sinclair when the political bug literally bit me on my backside. Okay. I knew then that when I got elected student body president that power is very it's intoxicating, but I knew then that when I saw the position I in as SJ president, that got me in the doors that other people didn't usually get into, got me into meetings that people didn't usually get me into. So after I graduated, I moved back to Detroit, ended up working for my member who represented Detroit at that time, Barbara Rose Collins, and the rest is history. I moved here in '94 and with a U-Haul truck full of stuff, and here I am. One thing led to another. I bounced around. I've worked for 4 members of Congress. Ironically, all of them have been Black women. So I worked for then Eddie Bernice Johnson. Then I got into the communications realm by working for the Sheila Jackson Lee from Houston, Texas, who a little bit everybody kind of knows Sheila Jackson Lee. But she hired me, Sinclair. This is a little story I never really tell anybody. I was in between jobs, and she needed a communications director. And someone called me. I interviewed with her. My interview with her was supposed to start at 5 p.m. that evening. Sheila Jackson Lee didn't see me till 1 o'clock in the morning for an interview. I knew it was sort of a test. But it is what it is. She was Sheila Jackson Lee. She still is and was an icon back then. What I did, Sinclair, when they hired me as communications director, is I just mimicked the person that had the job before me. So when it came to press statements, it might have to change up the wording, but I did the same style. And at that time, we didn't have social media when I was with her. So it was easy. It was more or less getting her on TV and doing press statements and speeches. That was it. One thing led to another. I left and did the private sector for a minute, but then a job came along with a woman by the name of Stacey Plaskett from the Virgin Islands. And Sinclair, let me tell you, 75% of me taking the job was because she represented the Virgin Islands. Beautiful. I had never been there. I figured I can go once a month if I'm working for her. Little do I know that at the time I got to work for her, we would experience 2 hurricanes, something we weren't ready for. And then that's when her profile started going up, because I started getting her on TV. And so she could explain, first of all, where she was from, the Virgin Islands, which is a part of America. You don't need a passport to go there. And just about the devastation that would happen. Lo and behold, let's fast forward to 3 weeks ago, and she gets appointed as an impeachment manager for Donald J. Trump. And here I am, never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would be the communications director for the only sister, the only from at the time on the team, and the first person from a territory to be an impeachment manager. And I don't think that I knew who she was. I knew how powerful she was. I knew how smart she was. But I don't think that, as we can tell, the rest of the world didn't know. And I'm glad that I work for her now because she's passionate about what she does. But people needed to see that side of the story coming from the
I think that's a good point. You've been with some very iconic Black women, and being a Black man, behind these strong, powerful women and projecting those images in a world where oftentimes our images aren't flattering and they definitely don't always represent the Black excellence, as I'm sure you know from the Jackson State University.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, how did you, take those amazing sisters that had been doing so much? What were some of the elements that you used to communicate, not just the truth that we know? We know Black women are amazing.
Right.
And
right.
the iconic particular Black women are heads and shoulders,
Exactly.
out of them 400 some odd people up there. You've been with some of the baddest of the baddest, the most wonderful of the wonderful. What are some of the elements that you've taken from that can really even help folks who are either interested in the space, looking at what's going on today, elevating the images of Black women? I didn't know you're literally a subject matter expert in like elevating the images of Black amazing women.
Yeah. And well, you know what, Sinclair, what the secret is that I grew up with strong Black women in my life. My mother, I have my sister, my aunts. And when I went and worked for these strong sisters, I looked at them as, how would I want someone that if they work for my mother or my sister to treat them in a job? And I got to realize that sometimes I'm the gatekeeper when I work for these women, especially when I'm doing communications. If somebody wants to know something or get them to do an interview, they usually got to come through me. And I look at it as, is this someone, would I put my mother or my sister in this situation if I work for them or someone work for them? So I thought about it like that. How, you gotta, it's like I said, I gotta protect the gate, because a lot of these sisters have a little bit harder than us brothers out here when it comes to people trying to bring up stuff about them. And so it was just about how the bottom line with me is, how would I want someone to treat someone in my family that's a woman that I love? And that's how I look at them too.
I think that deepness of what you just said was family and relationships. I think sometimes that gets lost because so many people are transactional. And I think what you just said is, look, this is a relationship, a dear relationship. Yeah. How do I make sure we protect that and elevate that? And I think one of the points, and I don't know how you pick them, maybe that might be some of your proprietary information how you pick which member, but you've picked some really superstars and have helped them propel. And I know it ain't no coincidence. Yeah. In this moment now that we're in, where so much attention is been on the Trump era, been on the impeachment trial, what do you think are some of the takeaways that you've been able to take from this and could share with the Black community in general, or even those who are following politics closely but may miss this?
Well, that insurgency that we saw on January 6th, Sinclair, it was real. I mean, that's what I want to let people know, that it was real and I was there. The point is that what I want to get across to some people is that when we were there, we did not know how bad it was until days later, because that's when all this footage came out. When they did the impeachment trial, we saw footage that we had never seen before. And, everyone thinks that everything is fine in America. We're united and things like that. We're not. From what I saw on January 6th, it showed me a whole nother side of America. And you went to school in Alabama. I went to school in Mississippi. We've been in places where we know that we weren't wanted. We weren't wanted in certain counties and things like that. And this is 2021, Sinclair. 2021, man, you were going through this stuff in the 90s. And let's think about our forefathers and our foremothers that were doing it in the 60s, 50s, and the 1860s. And it's still going on. And here, me and you, we tried to make this place a better place, a better world. With me and you are just one person each, but we still try. And when I saw that group of people out there, I said that we still have a long way to go. We still got a long way to go.
Go ahead. And I think even talking even more on the long way to go. Now, you've been actually on the Hill even after the issues related to 9/11. Like, you've seen some real, trauma that we've experienced. Yeah. You got me thinking about the Florida case where we were talking about Gore versus Bush,
hanging
chads. What have you seen change in that climate? I think that's an interesting perspective.
Let me say, what I've seen is when I first came to Capitol Hill, members of Congress and staff interacted. Members of Congress will, Democrats and Republicans will go out to dinner together. Their families, most of the time, they moved here because they as members of Congress, they worked They worked here most of the time. As staff, we will have receptions. If you might have a Republican office across the hall from yours, but we will have hall parties or just get together. When we go to the cafeteria, you don't know who's Democrat or Republican because you don't wear, you know, any regalia or anything like that, any paraphernalia that says you're Democrat or Republican. But one difference now is cable news, because you can tell a Democrat or a Republican office, and you know how you can tell, Sinclair? It's because if you go into an office and they got Fox News on, you're in a Republican office.
Wow.
You go into an office and we got MSNBC, CNN on, it's a Democratic office. That's how we can tell now. And we don't have that camaraderie amongst the members and amongst the staff. And that just trickles down to your constituency and other places of the world.
Wow, I think that's a powerful insight. And I guess then now the relationships aren't there where people are able to work together beyond, these crises. So
well, it's even worse now. We're in a pandemic because most people are working from home. So we don't even have the physical interaction with people. It's so funny because the Senate side is more parochial. I would tell people on the House side a fight might break out. They're a little bit more rambunctious on the House side. But even the staff of the Senate is a little bit more parochial, collegial than the staff of the House, and so now you even have the parallels, the brushback sometime between the House and the Senate. Now, imagine a Trump White House and what we had to deal with. We, as Democratic office, had no interaction with the Trump White House. They never talked to us and everything. As soon as Biden got in, you couldn't believe how the lines of communications have opened up so much. And it's simple just of communicating to each other, like what grants are we getting? So we can let our people know in our communities, hey, you got a $3 million grant that's coming down to your health clinic. So let's announce that. Trump and them didn't want us to announce that and would never let us know that. So, that's a big difference.
So in that interaction, is there anything as far as, again, part of what we do here at I Love Black People is talk about Black agendas, issues related to like HR 40. Are you at liberty to talk about any of the upcoming things? And I know being from Detroit, John Conyers was the person who introduced it initially.
And my old boss, Jackson Lee, is the one who's put it in now.
Yeah, humbly. So what are your thoughts? And, based on, I know you got to go, and I really appreciate the time you take in. We got to get you black on. What are your thoughts on the reparations side?
Sinclair, ever since I stepped foot into Mississippi at Jackson State, that's when I first learned about what reparations were. And then I come up to DC and I work on Capitol Hill, and I'm next to the iconic, our good brother, John Conyers. And then I work for Sheila Jackson Lee, who introduced the bill after he left. I think it's something that this country needs, not just for the monetary part, the money part of it, but just for the psyche part of it. Because at the same time, it's going to remind people who don't know what happened and why we're doing. And we got a history of people of this country giving reparations back to a class of people. So why can't we do it now? I just think right now it's a touchy subject because of what's going on, but this is the best time to get that bill through, Sinclair. I think you can kind of know, you know that. The reason why we need reparations is look what happened on January 6th. That's why. And our people are still going through that. And so, I mean, just to see that Confederate flag go through the Capitol was just, I thought I would never see that, ever. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think what you just said, I don't want to take too much more, and we got to get you back on. Man, I love you. Black people, we love Black people. The fact that you're on here, and Mike, I tell you, man, you've always been an inspiration. Hey. You've been consistent. You day for day, no parole. I mean, please continue. Whoever I see you with, I know they're a rock star. Even if it's before we even know they rock star, I think you figured out something. I'm not going to ask you the secret sauce again about how you know how to pick talent, but these are some amazing people, and I appreciate what you've done with this particular member. I know she's amazing, and the reason I know she's amazing is because of the hard work and the team behind. And if we're going to close this out, what would you like to close this out with?
Well, Sinclair, I just want to let people know that, man, since day one when I met you as a student body president at another university that we'll remain nameless right now. It's been all love since then. And it was not just, the bond brought us together, but at the same time, we were leading two universities in our own respective ways. And look where we're at now, man. It's just good to see that me and you have remained the day ones with each other since day one. And not too many people can say that, Sinclair. I see a Sinclair Skinner text or call, I'm going to take it. I see the day I need to get you on. What time do you, baby? Let me fit you on in. Because you know what, Sinclair, that's what we got to do, because we know that it's not about us, so much. We're going to be good. Me and you are going to be good. It's just these other people that we need to get in their heads and let them know, hey, this is what you kind of need to be listening to and doing. And everybody can be positive. But then Sinclair is always, we don't we and you don't burn bridges, but people that burn bridges with us, that's fine. But don't think that bridge will get rebuilt back, because we don't have time for it. We don't have always stay being like you are, my man. Stay being what you are. Now I want to do this though. I want to see if you would like for me to try to get the Congresswoman on.
Yeah, would love to. Please,
Okay.
you can get her on, and that would be super awesome. And bro, I'll wait till 1 o'clock in the morning too. Like whatever, whatever I gotta do, I'll do that, brother. Please.
Okay,
And thank you again. I appreciate you, amazing brother Mike McQuerry. Yeah, I'm gonna throw the yo back to you. And again, thank everybody for joining us on this journey. I am because we are.
Next up, we have Akua Zenzele, a traditional healer, criminal justice professional, philanthropist, minister, and African Queen mother.
In today's time, we are experiencing a lot of illness and death, and around that is a tremendous amount of fear and worry. Fear of getting sick or dying, fear of someone you love getting sick or dying, or sorrow when a loved one actually becomes ill or dies. Over the course of the next few weeks, we will provide tools in which to deal with these issues and more. Where we will start today is how to manage these very real and piercing emotions with flower remedies or flower essences. God has created trees and shrubs that produce flowers which help balance the emotions. There are 38 English flower remedies and 42 Australian flower essences. We will highlight a few of those here today that deal specifically with fear or sadness. Gorse is a flower remedy used for hopelessness, despair, and for one who has given up hope. Gorse creates a sense of renewed hope. Star of Bethlehem is a flower remedy used for distress and unhappiness due to shock or trauma, and it brings about comfort and consolation. The flower remedy mustard is for inexplicable sadness, gloom, and despair. This is for one who does not know why they feel that way, but mustard helps to create clarity of thought and brightness. The flower remedy red chestnut is for concern or fear about the welfare of others, especially loved ones, where something unfortunate may happen. Red chestnut promotes rational concern, allowing one to remain calm, and creates a peace of mind. In addition to these flower remedies, I'd like to mention one homeopathic remedy, Ignatia. Ignatia is used to treat grief and depression and is also used to treat situational anxiety. Please feel free to learn more about English or Australian flower essences, along with homeopathic remedies, so that you fear not and are very sure and confident that help is indeed on the way. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
All right. And welcome again to I Love Black People. Thank you. I'm your host, Sinclair Skinner, co-founder of iloveblackpeople.com. And today we've really been blessed with a brother that's working on some of the issues in a real intimate, really deep way. As we talk about the global Black agenda, we've really been focusing on reparations. But sometimes that can become such a political concept that doesn't have any faces. Of course, we talk about our ancestors. We talk about the different eras and phases of our existence in this so-called country in the context of slavery and Jim Crowism. But Jim Crow and slavery, those aren't names of people. Those aren't individuals. Today, we have an incredible guest that's literally going to put some real faces and real experiences so that we really can do some more connecting of understanding of how and where we are as a people. And I just want to welcome good brother George Monroe on the show. Thank you so much for joining us, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you give the people like a little introduction of who you are and maybe some of the things I know you talked about your background and formal studies in history, a little background on who you are, and then kind of give us the story about some of the work you've been doing and what you've been uncovering on this journey.
Great. So yeah, like I say, I'm George Monroe. I'm a native of Charlottesville, Virginia, and many folks may know Charlottesville because of the white supremacist activities that are taking place there a couple years back. You know, my family is basically part and parcel to that community, being born and bred out of Albemarle County. What I'm working on now currently, as far as understanding things about my background in history, I'm looking at what specifically makes me tick, as an African American man, being of 47 years of age, and how do I navigate today's sort of situation, today's sort of environment, as it relates to the Black experience within America. And like many, I've struggled to kind of come to terms with self, to understand my position and my place in this world, how to deal with dualism, how to deal with a certain amount of success, even as it relates to the requirements for assimilation to a degree, and still being my authentic, true self. And I've come to terms with the fact that, history is the best teacher to understanding who we are. And I've spent a great deal of time researching my family history all the way back to 1780. And, the interesting story for me in terms of when you think about reparations and you think about the importance of kind of knowledge of self, so to speak, I've been able to trace our family back to the plantation of America's fifth president, James Monroe. And growing up, it was always a story of, hey, that's your grandfather, right? That, he was the progenitor of our family and that he had basically had relationships with one of the slaves up there. In this case, her name was Thenia Hemmings. All oral family history. And so with anything dealing with history, I learned
Hemmings, is that related to Thomas Jefferson?
Sally Hemings' sister, Thenia Hemmings, yes.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So with that, of course, being that I'm a trained historian, I went to University of Richmond. With any historian, the first thing you have to have is primary and secondary resources or sources or sourced information that will validate whatever claims that you've been hearing. So for the last 20 years, I've been focused on uncovering the family history and getting back to kind of points of origin in terms of our experience here in Virginia coming off of the plantation, and focused on really kind of saying, what is our family history with the good and the bad? And that's important because when you understand who you are and where you came from, that gives you a certain sense of empowerment. It gives you a certain sense of self, so to speak. And that's important when you're navigating these days and times when there's so many different images being pushed to you and being shown to you that ultimately dictate to you who you are, how you should feel, what your perspective should be. And if you don't have that for yourself as far as a solid foundation, guess what's happened? You flow to and fro, right? And you never necessarily get to a sound footing on what it is how you should think and what you should believe in. All right. And so doing the family history thing has been very important to me as I take on a responsibility and have for some time being a father, being a pillar in the community, being a pillar in my home, and socializing our children to have a certain sense of self and to know who they are, where they come from.
All right. So when you take that, what you've been able to uncover and you just pose that with some of the current issues of us trying to figure out how to be compensated and some of the things that have gone on, how has that manifested locally in your community?
So great question. So one of the things that you mentioned in the beginning was being pro-Black. I'm of the belief too that you can be pro-Black and not be anti-white, right? And so the premise of what I believe as a person is that two people can't walk together unless they be agreed. And so how can you gain agreement in terms of what the shared experience is supposed to be, since we all have to be here together? In terms of looking at compensation and whatnot, I think that history is the best teacher. So if I can come to you and I can say, hey, look, here are the actual historical records, here are the actual historical documents that link me to a certain situation where I know someone benefited economically from free slave labor, for example, or from craftsmanship, right? So I had family members that were carpenters up at the University of Virginia, who helped maintain food kitchens and gardens and stuff like that in order to get to university, to make sure back in the 19th century that the University of Virginia would now reach $12 billion in endowment that we're speaking of today. Without that free slave labor back then, there would have been no University of Virginia, because I can't imagine any of those professors back then doing the farming and the upkeep and the maintenance and the building of the buildings in order for that position to be possible for today, right? It's the same thing when I look at Ashland Highland, where my ancestors were enslaved at. You know, that was an economic vehicle, farming back in agrarian 19th century Virginia. So the fact that there was free slave labor used to basically pad the coffers of President Monroe and some of the early Virginia families that were there, which now kind of manifests in terms of generational wealth for those that are still around. At what point do you actually start to take a look at, okay, so based upon these structures that were built, that descendants and other members of the community still benefit from, whereas there's still a marginalized community within Charlottesville, how do they now benefit from their ancestors being forced to be free slave labor? How do they benefit from those gains today like those other folks benefit today?
Today's episode of I Love Black People on Howard University's Radio Voices on Sirius XM 141 is brought to you by the Global Green Book, a Black survival guide. The Global Green Book 2020, the Healthcare Edition, which identifies Black-friendly and Black-owned healthcare providers worldwide. A Black survival guide highlighting places across the globe for Black people. The Global Green Book, available on Amazon and iloveblackpeople.com. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.